Today, we are breaking down our top 15 redraft tight ends. We are back in the studio here. Obviously, you guys probably noticed that we're wearing the same clothes. We are ripping these all in one day. But we are going to tackle the tight end position today, breaking down our top 15 guys. Hopefully, we will not go an hour and a half like we did on running backs and wide receivers, but we're going in depth. First look at the redraft rankings, and let's start right up top with Brock Bowers. He was tight end 3 in points per game last year at 21 years old, led all tight ends in targets, in routes, in air yards, in deep targets, in yards, in receptions, in yards after catch. Offense improved dramatically this year with Ashton Jeanty coming in, Jonnu Smith coming in, Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly upgrading the coaching staff, Jack Besh in the draft they also added. He is the passing offense. Brock Bowers, very rarely can you say this guy is going to lead his team in targets at the tight end position. And Brock Bowers not only will lead his team in targets, it might not be particularly close.
Not only will he lead his team in targets, as a rookie in 2024, he had 154 targets. 154 targets would be a top 5 targeted tight end season of all time. Yes, he played 17 games, but even when you contextualize Tony Gonzalez, Travis Kelce, some of the best tight ends of all time that played 16 games, him doing it as a rookie may be one of the most impressive things that I've seen. Brock Bowers, he's dynamic. He plays on all 3 levels. He is the number 1 de facto weapon in his offense. Sure, we like Jack Besh. We like Jacoby Myers. They are very clearly the ancillary weapons in this passing game. And as much as I love Ashton Jeanty, and I think he's going to be a top 4 overall redraft running back, these two are the nucleuses of the offense. There's a reason why they drafted Ashton Jeanty number 6 this year. There's a reason why they drafted Brock Bowers in the top 12 like last year. These are the 2 focal points of this offense, and an offense that we think are going to take major strides up with Jonnu Smith coming in with the new leadership at the helm.
So the one question that probably people have is, where do you draft this guy relative to the rest of the position? So if you're on the board in the mid-second round or the early second round, about where he goes on Underdog right now, are you comfortable pulling the trigger in a managed redraft setting? On Underdog, best ball, having an elite tight end matters a little bit more. So I think that could be, resulting in his ADP being more in that early to mid-second as opposed to probably maybe mid to late second in managed redraft leagues. Regardless, if you're on the board 207 or whatever, are you comfortable pulling the trigger on Bowers?
I am in the mid-second because there is a range of outcomes. This is Travis Kelce 2.0, and Travis Kelce peaked as the number 6 overall pick in certain years. However, though, as we'll talk about with the other 2 in this top 3, again, we have the next 2 here actually tied for our tight end 2. It really depends on the opportunity cost, because if these guys can be had for much, much cheaper on the market, I think I'd prefer getting my anchor at running back or wide receiver and seeing where these other 2 mentioned, Trey McBride and George Kittle, find their way on the board.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging because when you do draft a guy like Brock Bowers in the mid-second, you're inherently going to put yourself behind the 8 ball at wide receiver, at running back, at quarterback. But again, if he is the number 1 wins over replacement tight end in fantasy by a wide margin, he will end up being worth that pick. It's just that you won't know that when you select him.
It's in the range of outcomes he laps the field. And in that range of outcome where he laps the field, getting him anywhere outside of the first round is going to be a big time steal. So I think mid-second kind of bakes in both ranges of outcome, where these other 2 we mentioned kind of close the gap, and he's maybe not worth quite the mid-second. He's more of a 2-3 turn early third guy, or maybe one or either of these guys, like Kittle's older, he gets hurt. McBride doesn't maybe have the touchdowns go for him this year, and Marv takes a bigger step up. Brock Bowers, to me, has no concerns in his projection, and the upside quite literally could be 2022 Travis Kelce.
Absolutely. So we actually have different tight end 2s, both in the tier 2 for us. I believe the only tight ends in this tier for us. Yes, they are, in fact. I'll let you take it away with your tight end 2, and then I'll get into mine.
Yeah, so my tight end 2, again, very, very close margins between 2 and 3 for me. Trey McBride comes in at 2. Again, I have McBride 2, Kittle 3. You have Kittle 2, McBride 3. Pretty easy to see why they're tied here. With Trey McBride, number 2 in tight end targets this past year, and he was only 7 less than Brock Bowers, despite playing 1 less game than Bowers. McBride played in 16. Brock Bowers played in 17 games. So you could very well make the case if McBride played in that last game, he could have actually been the leader in terms of targets at the tight end position. With Trey McBride, very identical volume situation to Bowers this past season, 15.6 PPR points per game, despite only scoring 2 touchdowns. And in fact, he's only scored 6 touchdowns in his 3 career years. I mean, to me, this feels like an area of his game that he could very much stand to improve in. I mean, we're talking about a 6'5", 246-pound freak athlete. It's scary to think what his ceiling in fantasy could be if he had a higher touchdown rate. If he had an outlier 7, 8, 9 touchdown year, we think Kyler Murray is an above average level quarterback. Yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. will be a factor in the passing game, but it's very clear that McBride will be a top 2 target for a quarterback that we trust. And if he does increase that touchdown equity, who's to say he can't score 17 and a half, 18 and a half points per game?
Yeah, he can. He's got a high ceiling for sure. I tend to think that Marvin will take the step forward, which is why I do prefer Kittle. But McBride is, you have it listed here, he's one of the safer picks in fantasy football, because if you're just looking for an early third round, kind of mid third round pick where he's going, that's not going to miss you anything, and he's going to definitely put you ahead of the 8 ball at that position. I think he's a great fit for that. But the reason I don't find myself drafting him very often is because Kittle goes like a full round and a half later. And
Kittle's the steal of drafts right now.
I prefer Kittle straight up to Trey McBride. And the reason is because he has more touchdown upside, as we've seen. He tight end 1 in PPR points per game last year. He already outscored both of these players with some of these other factors improving. The fact that this dude has only ever had 100 plus targets 2 times in his career. To give you guys an idea, Wan'Dale Robinson had like 35 more targets than George Kittle last year. And he's been tight end.
Shows you the state of both their offenses.
Literally, yeah. He's been tight end 6 or better in 6 of 7 years, or in 7 straight years, sorry. That is insane that you can be that productive when only getting 100 plus targets twice over a 7-year period. Ayuk is hurt coming into the year. Maybe he's going to be on the PUP list. We don't exactly know, but he's coming into the season hurt. Deebo Samuel, gone in Washington. Christian McCaffrey, kind of a question mark health-wise. I mean, I'm sure he'll be fine for the most part, but if it's just Kittle and McCaffrey, that's 2 less guys that you have to worry about. This offense is Kittle's offense, and the 49ers also have the easiest schedule in football.
I genuinely don't understand why he's so cheap. Like, again, I don't have him ranked above McBride, but they're close enough to hear the argument like you've just made. Like, Kittle was the tight end 1 in fantasy last year. I just mentioned that Brock Bowers might take a 2022 Travis Kelce step. Well, guess what? Maybe not from a fantasy perspective, given the volume that Kelce's gotten, but from a real-life perspective, you could make the case that George Kittle has peaked higher as a real-life tight end than, Travis Kelce, as I almost said Trey McBride. Travis Kelce has, so it confuses me. Again, yes, it's a lower volume passing situation. We haven't really seen the 49ers be one of the top 5 to top 10 volume situations, but if he can just take a bigger dent in terms of the target share, with no Deebo Samuel, with Brandon Ayuk on the mend with that ACL tear, with unproven receivers behind him, like currently right now, Jawan Jennings slated to be the 1, Ricky Pearsall slated to be the 2, Christian McCaffrey still coming back from the injury, is still a bit of an unknown. Does he get back to the receiving workload we saw a few years ago? Is he more so kind of what he was 2 years ago, where the receiving kind of dipped back, but the efficiency was spiked up? I don't really know how this 49ers offense is going to materialize, but all I do know is Kittle is the number 1 receiving threat that I trust on this team.
Yeah, he could legitimately have like a legacy year where he's at a point in his career now where he's got to start thinking about how to get a gold jacket. And this could be the year that, like, they won 6 games last year, and George Kittle was the tight end 1 in points per game. Like, if they're back to the same old 49ers, but with, Pearsall and Jennings and Ayuk maybe when he comes back and McCaffrey, like, I've seen too many mouths to feed for George Kittle. People have been saying it for years, and I've been drafting Kittle every year and not giving 2 shits if there's too many mouths to feed, but now suddenly there's not. Well,
I mean, we've seen Purdy. Yes, sure, the situation for Purdy was better 2 years ago than it is coming into this year, but we've seen Purdy finish as a top 5 MVP candidate, finish with 30-plus passing touchdowns, finish with 4,500 yards. Like, if Kittle is now the number 1 wide receiver, quote unquote, because obviously he's a tight end, but he functions as a wide receiver in this offense, like, why can't he go out there, all he needs is 6, 7, 8 targets per game, given the efficiency he brings to the table.
Oh, yeah.
Like, to me, he is still very clearly the number 1 tight end in the NFL, aside from fantasy. Like, just straight real-life NFL, if I'm building a team from scratch that could go win a Super Bowl year 1, George Kittle's the first tight end I'm picking.
Yeah, no, he's an absolute beast, man. Let's move into Sam LaPorta, and this is in tier 3. With Kittle and McBride, I think I have Kittle ranked like over McBride, like I said, in the early to mid third round range. Top 40 player
for me as well.
But like, you legitimately don't have to take him into like the 50s of ADP, which I don't know why. Like, you're spending a 4th, 5th round pick on Kittle when I think he should be going in the 3rd round. But let's get into Sam LaPorta and TJ Hockenson, and then Kelce and Njoku. We have a little bit lower down this tier. But LaPorta and Hockenson, both you and I are in agreement that are in this tier. And then Njoku and Kelce, we kind of differ on a little bit. But I'll let you take it away with LaPorta.
Yeah, so LaPorta is my tight end 5. I believe your tight end 4. Hockenson's my tight end 4. I believe he's your tight end 6.
He's my tight end 6, yeah.
Tight end 6. So starting with LaPorta, again, we'll get it out of the way right now. If you had Sam LaPorta last year, it was a down sophomore season. Again, this guy was being drafted very early in drafts, third round pick, fourth round pick in a lot of your drafts. It was disappointing to see the drop off. 14.1 PPR points per game and 7.1 targets per game as a rookie. And that fell down to 10.9 PPR points per game and 5.2 targets per game this past season. His target share also fell 21% versus 17% from year 1 to year 2. The concerns from LaPorta really stem for me for the departure of Ben Johnson, along with the emergence of Jameson Williams in the context of this offense. He established himself this past year, real-time receiving threat, 50-plus receptions, 1,000-plus receiving yards, one of the most efficient receivers in the league. Like, Jameson Williams is a factor now that we weren't baking in last year when we were projecting Sam LaPorta. However, this is still a 24-year-old, third-year tight end 2 overall in fantasy under his belt like we saw 2 years ago. And we've seen high-end touchdown equity for an offense with a quarterback that has thrown 67 touchdowns in the last 2 years with Jared Goff. I mean, we mentioned, tethament to Joe Burrow. We've mentioned, tethament to Dak Prescott when we were talking about the wide receiver video with Chase and with Lamb. You can make the case with how Goff has played from a pocket passing perspective. He's one of the few shoo-ins that we can say he's going to throw for 30 touchdowns next year. So when it comes to Sam LaPorta, that touchdown equity, along with the stretch that he had weeks 13 to 17, where he produced 13.62 points per game, you see the upside case scenario for him getting back to rookie year levels. My question mark and why I have a guy like Hockenson over him is I don't know if he's going to reach exactly those levels, but I do think it's going to be somewhere baked in between where he was as a rookie versus where he was last year. It just depends on how much closer he is to each tetherment because, like I said, Jameson Williams is simply a factor. He wasn't after his rookie season.
Yeah, no, for sure. LaPorta is a guy that I think when he starts to slide 5th, 6th, 7th round or whatever, that's when I would probably be comfortable taking him. But he goes right around where George Kittle goes, and I would much rather have George Kittle. So he's just a guy that I don't find myself drafting very often as a result of that. But and also too, do I think Sam LaPorta will be enough of a difference maker to the point that I wouldn't just rather have a 9th or a 10th round tight end who projects slightly worse at a way cheaper cost than the 5th round pick? I opportunity bundle wise, would I rather have David Njoku and Devontae Smith, or would I rather have Sam LaPorta and Ricky Pearsall?
And that's what it comes down to LaPorta. Again, he's young, third-year player, tethered to a good offense. There's a lot to like. But if he's going to be closer to the 17 and 19% target share rather than the 21% he was as a rookie, there's unfortunately a cap ceiling there. Speaking of cap ceiling, I mean, this is a guy that we thought had a cap ceiling back when he was at Detroit, and then he completely uncapped it his first year in Minnesota. He unfortunately had injury problems this past year, coming off of that torn ACL. But could he get back to that 2023 level? And we are talking about TJ Hockenson of the Vikings.
Yeah, Hockenson in 2023, before his injury, was tight end 2 in PPR points per game with 14.6, which, to contextualize, that was the same year in which Justin Jefferson was over 21 points per game at wide receiver. And, higher than LaPorta with Addison and Jefferson producing at a high level that year. So, and before 2023, he was tight end 4 in points per game and had a couple top 7 seasons or so in Detroit. So this is a guy that we just know full-fledged is just a good tight end. I do worry about the J.J. McCarthy factor of it all affecting someone like Hockenson because I'm not going to take it off of Jefferson's plate because Jefferson's too good. If the volume, the production, the touchdowns, whatever goes down because McCarthy's a first-year starter, Darnold had been a multi-year veteran at that point in time, Jefferson is probably still getting his, but Hockenson and Addison are likely the ones who suffer, and I think it'll be in the form of being inconsistent. Yeah. Whereas the end of season final numbers, Hockenson finishes tight end 5 might be fine, but how it got there might not be necessarily as strong as, that first year in Minnesota that we saw with TJ Hockenson. He still commanded 20% targets per run last year, even despite coming off of the injury. But the efficiency is the thing that's the question mark because the one thing that does scare me a little bit about Hockenson, and I'm not saying he's going to be washed or something, but he wasn't an elite athlete before the injury, and now he's had a torn ACL, and it's not like he looked like a superstar when he came back. So, second year off the torn ACL, we know the trend, that kind of thing, but he didn't really look that great last year.
Yeah, if the passing volume goes down with McCarthy because they want to, lean on the run game more with a young quarterback, obviously, like you said, Justin Jefferson, his dent is not going to be taken out of. The transition from Darnold to McCarthy is going to have its most impact on the tertiary weapons in this offense. TJ Hockenson, Jordan Addison, maybe, Aaron Jones out of the backfield. The tertiary receiving threats, not Justin Jefferson, are going to be the ones that take the biggest impact.
Yeah, for sure. And I have Kelce over Hockenson. And it's not because I think Kelce is better than Hockenson at this point in his career. Kelce's just like the Joe Mixon of tight ends, where you plug your nose and you just take your top 6 option, because he's finished tight end 6 in PPR points per game last year after looking objectively washed. And he also only scored 3 touchdowns. And I think that's the big part that I feel like won't continue, even if he is kind of like washed to some degree. I have him tight end 5 because he was top 3 in targets at tight end, top 4 in target share, top 3 in routes, top 3 in air yards. He was first in red zone targets as well. His expected fantasy points per game was 17.0 based on his usage. And again, he's kind of washed. So is he going to have the same level of usage? Is he going to have the same level of expected production that he had at the prime of his career? No. But I do expect him to probably have more touchdown luck than he had last year. And that would make him a difference-making producer, top 3 to 5 level option. And even last year, top 6 tight end, he was a guy that you could throw out there every week, and more often than not, he was going to be a decent option for you. Unless you had a Bowers or a McBride or somebody who was better, you probably felt comfortable with having Travis Kelce. The Chiefs also last year were 16th in passing yards, 11th in passing touchdowns, which, given that they have the best quarterback in the league, or one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league, with Patrick Mahomes, if they're back to being a top level offense like they were back in like 2022, then even if Kelce is washed, he can fall backwards into 10 touchdowns and 1,000 yards.
I don't disagree that the situation is there for him, and he was productive enough last year to warrant being up here. The reason why I have, for example, we have David Njoku listed at tight end 7 consensus. I have David Njoku straight up over him. I have TJ Hockenson straight up over him. I have Sam LaPorta straight up over him. Is that I have no inclination that those 3 guys are declining as players. I have evidence that Travis Kelce is. And it's scary to me. An older player is kind of already showing his signs that he's declining. We mentioned on the wide receiver video that depending on the optimism for Rashee Rice is how aggressively we can rank Worthy. I think it's fine to rank Kelce here for now. But if we hear more positive of Rashee Rice being fully healthy is a lot more of a negative for Travis Kelce than anybody in the offense, because of the context of where those targets are going to be coming from. Of
course, yeah.
Rashee Rice operating across that middle of the field, yak opportunities. At this point in his career, Travis Kelce, that's all he can do is be an intermediate threat, run across the middle of the field, and contribute a little bit in yak. He's not going to go out there and high point a football over double coverage like he was in 2021. He's not going to go out there and blaze up the seam for a 35-yard gain anymore. He's going to be an underneath target, which, given how KC wants to run their offense, isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just my issue is what the split's going to look like with a fully healthy Rashee Rice taking over that type of portion of the field. That's my question.
Yeah, my only thing would be it's baked into his price. He's like a 7th, 8th, 9th round pick now. You've never gotten Travis Kelce that cheap. And maybe in home leagues, people just see the big name Travis Kelce and still want to take him in like the 4th round or something. But where he's going, I'm comfortable taking him where he goes.
Again, if I can get him cheaper than tight end 5, tight end 6, I'm fine. Like tight end 8, tight end 9 off the board, I think that's where I'm at personally. But
Jonnu Smith goes ahead of him on Underdog.
Yeah. Like for example, the one specifically that I completely disagree on is David Njoku. And David Njoku, I have aggressively ranked comparative to you. David Njoku is a guy
I have aggressively ranked relative to the market. You just are more aggressive than me.
I am all in on David Njoku in regards to where he's on the market. We got him in an Underdog draft at like 124.
Yeah, that's absurd.
Like I would take this guy in the top 80, 85 and sleep like a baby. Because when we're looking at what he's done the last 2 years, 12.5 PPR points per game in the last 2 seasons, and specifically this past year, in games he played 50+% of the snaps in 2024, 15.3 points per game. Clear top 2 target in his offense, 9.32 RAS. We know he's athletic. In back-to-back years, like I said, with a 21.5% and a 22.8 team target share. Regardless, whether it's Joe Flacco, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, Kenny Pickett, even for all it matters. It's comparable to the bad quarterback situation he dealt with last year. Again, he had games where Dorian Thompson-Robinson was starting at quarterback, and he was still a dominant producer. So even though the fact that I fully respect Jerry Jeudy, I think Jerry Jeudy is a number 1 wide receiver in this instant. Even if you view Jerry Jeudy to be that, David Njoku is still a top 2 target, and he was tight end 4 in points per game in 2024. Just the fact that he was tight end 4 in points per game in 2024 and he's going in the 120s makes absolutely no fucking sense in the world.
Yeah, The only thing I'd push back on, because I'm actually well above consensus too, so I don't have to push back on David Njoku. You and I are in line. You're just a little bit more aggressive than I am.
I'm just like all in, and you're like 90% in. Or something
like
that.
the only difference is that I think Harold Fannin could factor into his route participation, who they spent a top 75 draft pick on, who was like the most productive tight end in college football history. So that would be the only thing I would say. And maybe it's more of a 12 personnel thing and all that kind of stuff. But
Andrew's likely kind of split for me.
that would be the only pushback I'd have on David Njoku. But otherwise, Joe Flacco, Shadur Sanders, I don't really care. David Njoku was really productive anytime he was on the field last year. So we could probably move into tier 4, which is Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft, and some other guys here. I'll start us off with Tyler Warren, rookie tight end of the Indianapolis Colts, 14th overall pick in the class. Penn State offense in college last year, he was the whole offense. You don't see tight ends, alpha-ing wide receivers in college very often. You don't see tight ends getting, fullback carries and, all the touches that Tyler Warren got.
His role was bowling ball. He played the role of bowling ball on that Penn State offense. Whether, like you said, it was at fullback or on drag routes or in the end zone.
Wildcat.
Just a big beast.
Yeah, and when you're a top 15 pick and the I don't know if you guys have seen the war room footage of the Colts when they drafted Tyler Warren. They were praying that he fell to them at 14. He's going to be the focal point of this offense, man. I expect Daniel Jones to win this job. I've been vocal about that. Or to maybe A-Rich takes a major step if you're a big A-Rich guy. I personally think it'll be Daniel Jones because I think he can actually throw a football, respectively, and fucking Anthony Richardson can't.
Can he though?
I can see this being the surprise team of 2025 in a high-end range of outcomes. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're going to be the best offense in the world, but I could see Warren making a big difference, Jonathan Taylor having a good season. I love me some Josh Downs, of course. Pittman was banged up last year. A.D. Mitchell's a solid player. Whether it's Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, it doesn't really matter. I'm trusting the draft capital. I'll probably let my league mates worry about the quarterback play, and that's why he's falling to like the 9th, 10th round of drafts. People did it with Brock Bowers last year. I'm not saying that Warren is as good of a prospect as Brock Bowers, but he was drafted like the same exact pick as Brock Bowers pretty much. Yeah,
no. Warren, good prospect. Again, we have another rookie tight end we'll talk about in a second that Warren probably has a more immediate path to targets, but I still prefer the upside of the other guy. That's the only difference for us right now is I do have Loveland, I believe, one spot higher than Warren. You have Warren higher. This whole range, though, this is what, the tier 3 of our tight ends? Legitimately from 8 to like 13, range these guys in a hat, to be honest, because all of them have their own
These
cases.
guys are partially why I don't really want to
They all have upside.
I don't really want to take Sam LaPorta in the 5th round because of these guys.
Yeah, like just looking from an opportunity cost standpoint, like especially like, even if you're in a one tight end league and you're not in a best ball format, like you pair 2 of these guys up at the end of your draft, and it's still less of an opportunity cost than taking LaPorta in round 5.
Yeah, it's like you can take Tyler Warren in round 9 or 10, and then maybe if you want a safe option, take Hunter Henry in round 15.
Yeah, or fuck, my favorite strat a couple years ago, it actually what led me to Sam LaPorta. In rounds 12 and 14 in redraft, because I didn't even think Warren's going to go cheaper than round 9 in home leagues. Like that year, I took in rounds, I think 12 and 14, one guy that missed, one guy that hit big. The guy that missed, Luke Musgrave. The guy who hit big, Sam LaPorta.
Just pair 2 of these guys together, potentially. Right. And you grab Warren and maybe, in home leagues, if Warren and Loveland are going that cheap, you could just take both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny that we mentioned the name Luke Musgrave because tight end 9, his teammate, Tucker Kraft, the better tight end at the time, went around after Luke Musgrave, so everybody was all over Luke Musgrave that year. And for the purpose of respecting the opportunity, I did take Musgrave ahead of Tucker Kraft at the end of my draft that year, but ever since the NFL started for both these guys, the last 2 years, Tucker Kraft has been the tight end 1 in Green Bay. And while you'll look at the tight end 9 ranking, you'll think, well, the math doesn't quite math here because he was only tight end 15 in points per game last season. He averaged less than 10. But for me, it's more of a bet that a young tight end that has shown elite flashes takes a further step in his development in year 3. And the best comparable that I have to this is Mark Andrews. And that's actually who Tucker Kraft kind of reminds me of, where I think if this is firing on all cylinders, he's going to have touchdown equity, he has ability, and while the math doesn't quite math there in terms of getting there going into the year, once you see this guy on the football field, on the gridiron with those cleats tied up, he's going to pay off. Because like I said, it's a projection that the elite flashes that he's shown can materialize on a more consistent basis. We mentioned in the wide receiver, in the running back video with Josh Jacobs, that we think that this could potentially be a much improved Packers offense. Jordan Love getting healthier. It was an uninspiring wide receiver core in 2024. Now they add Matthew Golden in the first round, maybe add some more verticality to the scheme. I think that this pass game as a whole can have far more juice than what we saw after Jordan Love got hurt against the Eagles. And when we talk about Tucker Kraft, if he does have that heightened role, if he does potentially become more involved on a week-to-week basis, he played 84% of the routes last year. And like I said, in the games that he did have big-time weeks, we saw the target share numbers actually spike up. For the most on the season, he's a 12 to 14% type of target share player. But in the weeks that he was big-time, he was a top 5, top 3 tight end, he was over 20% of the target. So it makes me think, if the Packers sit down this offseason, think of what's in the best interest of their offense, add a guy that can impact all 3 levels in Matthew Golden, Tucker Kraft, to me, can dominate the intermediate portion of the field. And like I said, has the amount of juice to dominate the seam, which is what Mark Andrews became with Lamar Jackson with the Baltimore Ravens. So again, I get it. There's probably tight ends in this range that have safer ranges of outcomes because of what we saw last year. But I'm willing to take the bet on an offense I believe in, a talent I believe in, and a potential role change for Tucker Kraft being more involved on a week-to-week basis.
I have him a little bit lower than you, but it's only I believe in him too. The only reason I have him a bit lower than you is because I looked at Tucker Kraft being more so like I wanted to see better efficiency numbers than I saw. Like you said, targets per route run and yards per route run, stuff like that. There's not a whole lot that points you to other than his athleticism that he can be like a monster as a tight end. But it is a young player ascending, so I'll give you that for sure. And like where you're getting him to, like you just take him in the 12th round or whatever. Like I'd rather do that. I'd rather take him in the 12th round than LaPorta in the 5th round for sure.
Well, for me, I'm looking at it. It's like the efficiency that, like, despite not being a consistent target share player, he had 50 catches. He turned into over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. Like if he's just more consistently involved, what if that turns into 65 catches for 880 yards and 9 touchdowns?
Yeah, no, he's going to have a top 6 season if that happens.
Yeah, so, I mean, Tucker Kraft, I love him. Another tight end that I love in that division, rookie tight end, go blue here, Colston Loveland. I mentioned I do actually have him 1 spot ahead of Tyler Warren. Picked them out of the hat. They're both elite tight end prospects. They both get elite draft capital. But with Colston Loveland, you can kind of picture him being used in that Sam LaPorta role for Ben Johnson's offense, a role that, like I said, yielded a top 2 tight end point per game season from LaPorta as a rookie.
Yeah, I think the one tough thing with Colston Loveland is that there's way more obstacles for him to be on the field right away. Not only just at wide receiver, which DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, there's going to be a lot of competition for targets there. We don't know if Caleb Williams is a superstar quarterback yet. We think he can maybe take that ascension this year with Ben Johnson and the weapons core that they have. But I do kind of envision Cole Kmet being a little bit of a pest from a route participation standpoint. Am I saying that Cole Kmet's going to start over Colston Loveland? No. Like, I mean, he spent 10th overall pick in the draft on the guy. But could it be possible that Loveland's out there 60, 70% of the routes instead of 80, 90%, like you just mentioned, like a guy like Kraft would be out there for? And I think definitely Tyler Warren will be out there for if we're talking among the 2 rookies. We're both high on the Bears offense, you more so than me, but Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, Odunze, DJ Moore, Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet, and Swift and whatever he gives you out of the backfield. This is an ascending offense. You probably want pieces of it. I guess the hard part for me is just getting there from like a projection standpoint. Yeah. Like how many targets this guy get? Like can he be efficient and rise in dynasty value because he had a lot of great underlying metrics? Yeah. Is the actual raw fantasy point per game production going to be there would be my question. Yeah,
and it's probably going to be like by year 2 is when we start seeing this peak. Maybe the target hierarchy by then kind of clears out. DJ Moore's traded or Cole Kmet's off the team. And then at that point, it's like, okay, Odunze, Burden, Loveland, easy to project. I still think he's worth taking shots on this year specifically because if he, like I said, like there's no CeeDee Lamb, there's no Jamar Chase, there's no elite alpha number 1 target. Right. There's more so guys that I'm confident in their talent levels projecting into a role. But Loveland is a part of that discussion. Somebody on here is going to be the number 1 target. Somebody on here is going to be the number 2 target.
Someone's probably going to disappoint in this receiver core realistically too.
If Loveland, again, I get it, there is more uncertainty because of how good the core is around him. If he does end up developing into a top 2 target on what I believe to have high-end offense type of upside, not only is tight end 10 a steal, tight end 10 could end up being the league winner at the tight end position this year, like Sam LaPorta level league winner, if he does develop into that top 2 target. Again, risk level here because it's unclear, but in round 12, round 13, you bet your ass I'm taking the shot on it.
Yeah, and if you think of who has the highest investment from the team on this roster, it is Odunze and it's Loveland. They were the top 10 picks, and Burden was a second rounder. As much as you like Luther Burden, I wouldn't be shocked if he had a down rookie season.
The overlap too. Highest investment, it's either Rome Odunze or it's Colston Loveland. New regime, it's either Luther Burden or it's Colston Loveland. You know who's talked about twice in that?
Colston Loveland.
So there you go.
Yeah, so he's an interesting one for sure. I would say definitely if I drafted Warren in a redraft league, I'd be fine rolling with no second tight end. Mm-hmm. But if I drafted Loveland in a redraft league, I might want to roster a Jake Ferguson for the first 3 weeks of the year just to see how the target share and the routes and all that kind of stuff is developing. Maybe play Ferguson for a couple of weeks and then drop him once Loveland has taken over. That would be the only adjustment I would make if I drafted Loveland in a standard redraft league versus in best ball. Obviously, I'm also more likely to go with like a 3 tight end build with Loveland versus maybe a 2 tight end build with Warren.
Yeah, for sure. But we'll go on to tight end 11, the final of the tier 4 range. And I mentioned Tucker Kraft potentially developing into this guy. Well, what about the guy himself, Mark Andrews?
Yeah, Mark Andrews had one of the wonkiest top 7 seasons you're going to see at the tight end position. On weeks 1 to 5, people dropped Mark Andrews. Yeah. Like legit, like he was that bad. He was running like no routes. He dropped 2 donuts in week 3 and 4. He was like borderline alpha by Isaiah Likely at points in the season.
They were right to drop him.
Yeah, he was playing terribly. And week 6 onward, he was back to being like a functional tight end, 13.1 PPR points per game, was tight end 8 over that stretch. I think the ceiling is probably lower than it usually is with Mark Andrews because A, he's got to deal with Isaiah Likely. B, he's getting a little bit older and maybe has lost a step a little bit. But he had 11 touchdowns last year. And while that could regress, that's what his role is. Like, even if he only had 500 yards this year, I could still see him having 11 touchdowns because he plays with one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league, and his role is to be a red zone and end zone target. So definitely a better in best ball tight end than a managed format guy because I think he might be a little frustrating for redraft leagues.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. He's not somebody that I'd be comfortable drafting as my starting tight end in a redraft league unless, like I said, I balanced it with...
If I punted the position completely and I got him in the 9th, 10th round, I think I'd be fine with it, but I wouldn't be like, okay, I'm set at this position.
I'm pairing him with Warren or Loveland.
Yeah, he's a good option to pair with those guys, especially considering, like we already made reference to, grab one of them in round 10, one of them in round 11. That's a lot less draft capital invested than a round 5 tight end or a round 4 tight end.
And people might be thinking, well, how is 2 picks invested not more opportunity cost than 1 pick invested? Well, let's think of it like this. Who are the round 10 and 11 receivers?
Rashad Bateman and I think if you're lucky, you get like maybe a rookie receiver there, like I don't even think like Golden and Buka are going to be off the board already. You're probably looking like Jaden Higgins, probably.
And who would be worth more in a trade? 2 of those guys or Tedero McMillan?
Tedero McMillan.
So there's your answer. So for those of you that are wondering, oh, well, it's 2 dart throws instead of 1. It's like 5th round versus 10th and 11th round. Like 10th and 11th round, like you're taking handcuff running backs. You're taking wide receiver 5, 6s, 7s on your team. Like round 5, you're taking a consequential starting lineup piece.
Yeah, exactly why we would, kind of go in that direction there. So, and I feel good about Mark Andrews as like maybe a functional option, but I wouldn't be excited to draft him. And he's also a big name too, so it's possible he's going lower on Underdog than he would go in a managed redraft league because people, have had Mark Andrews in years past and he's won them championships and that kind of thing. So let's move into the last couple of tight ends here. We got Jake Ferguson, Jonnu Smith, Evan Engram, and unfortunately, Kyle Pitts, who is still in our top 15 here. I'll let you go quick on Jake Ferguson and Jonnu Smith since you have them ranked higher than me.
Yeah, we'll keep it quick. Jake Ferguson, tight end 10, 10.4 points per game in 2023, en route to a 100-plus target, 700-plus yard season. 2024 this year, when Dak was healthy, 10.2 PPR points per game and a tight end 10 pace, despite not scoring a single touchdown. So we did see a comparable year, but he wasn't even having nearly the touchdown luck.
I think he had 8 touchdowns in 2023, didn't he?
He had 7, 10 if you included, I believe, 5 and then 8 if you included the playoff game against the Packers. But regardless, though, I think that case is actually going to be made that he might very well have the most touchdown equity of his career. When you're thinking of what Dak's projected to do, Finally, he doesn't have to be looked at as the number 2 overall receiving target. It could open up a lot more value of targets for Jake Ferguson. If he just has to be the ancillary number 3 for a high-octane offense with more touchdown upside, to me, with the player he is, that's more valuable than being the hyper-targeted number 2 on a lesser offense.
Yeah, Ferguson's one of those guys, like I said, I would probably pair with a high upside swing, whether it's like a rookie tight end or maybe a second-year tight end or something like that. But I do think he's a functional option if you like really punt the position and you want to take one. I'm not taking a tight end until round 13 or whatever. Like, he's definitely the type of guy that I think this is actually one of the more optimal years to do this too, between quarterback and tight end. I think they're a little bit, deeper when you factor in the pairing of 2 late round guys at tight end versus, maybe taking a late round quarterback. And, once you get to round 7, round 8, round 9 of wide receivers and running backs, it really is going to start to taper off anyways. So,
and we've literally seen the number 3 weapon tight end role in this Cowboys offense before. When Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb were there, it wasn't Jake Ferguson, it was Dalton Schultz. And I think Jake Ferguson is a better player than Dalton Schultz was. Dalton Schultz was a mid tight end 1 in a year.
Yeah, exactly. And Jonnu Smith is tight end 13 for us.
He's so polarizing, man.
He's tight end 6 on Underdog, which to me is insane that he's going that high.
6?
6. I don't know why he's going that high. Again, 13.1 PPR points per game and finished as the tight end 5 last year. But like by that logic, wouldn't that mean David Njoku should go as the tight end 5 in redraft? Like, I just don't get the hypocrisy of drafting Jonnu based on what he did last year.
Because they like the Finns offense and his stacking.
Yeah, maybe it's a stacking thing. I think Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they're going to have that bad of a year again.
Well, dude, there was a stretch week 11 on where Jonnu Smith averaged 18.6 points per game and had 20 plus in 3 separate weeks.
He was a beast. Like I'm not saying he didn't
but
deserve
I think it's
that
more
production.
indicative of the fact that the wide receivers were useless in that stretch. Or if you expect Jonnu Smith to be the tight end 6 in ADP, you better fucking have Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 23. You better fucking have Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 41. Because otherwise, how the heck is he going to get there?
Yeah, exactly. It was, like you said, a messy ending, 18.6 PPR points per game. Best ball, I get it, but I'm much higher on Hill and Waddle, so I can't get there with Jonnu Smith. Evan Engram is also kind of a guy in this range.
Gross.
He's so gross, but he's cheap Travis Kelce, in my opinion, where the Broncos are an ascending team, ascending offense. The only real pieces of it going highly are Sutton and Harvey. And Engram can be, I think, a top 6 to 8 fantasy tight end this year because just off of pure volume, he's been tight end 4, tight end 7 the last 2 seasons before 2024's injury-riddled campaign. And he's had 5 total years of his career where he's been a top 7 tight end in points per game. So I know he seems bad and he probably isn't the best tight end in the world, but Sean Payton kind of likes big slot receivers, and that's basically what Evan Engram is. So Ingram's target shares being top 8 among the tight end position in every single year of his career, except for 2021 when he had an injury-riddled year. I mean, tight end 9 on Underdog is definitely too early. I would not take him tight end 9. I have him ranked, I think, tight end 12 to 15, somewhere in that range. But if you punt the position, you take Colston Loveland in the 9th or the 10th round, and then you want to take Evan Engram in the 11th or 12th and just kind of get by at the position. Again, he's perfect for that. Him and Ferguson take them when you take a rookie tight ends.
Yeah, I think the thing that worries me about Engram, again, the follow the money people are going to fucking love Engram because he signed a nice little deal. He's on the Broncos, Bo Nick, Sean Payton. You just look at it at surface level and you'll be like, okay, no, it fits. But the issue that I have with Evan Engram is that an Evan Engram big slot target was one of the most inefficient types of offense in the last few years. And again, he was in a situation in Jacksonville. He could command volume. He could function in that role. They didn't really fucking care about optimizing their offense because, whatever. We suck at football. That's what the Jags have been, quite frankly. Ever since Lawrence been dealing with his injury issues, Doug Peterson, the shine after that playoff game worn out, they've been a very average at best football team. So my question is, does he get that same type of dirty volume with a coach that actually knows how to run offense? Does he get that same type of dirty volume when they have a guy, and again, I'm not going to go out here and tout Devon Vele as a game changer at receiver, but you compare the efficiency in the big slot role for what Vele was giving to them last year. Do we expect Evan Engram to be all that more efficient? And if you think that's an outrageous claim to say, go look at the per target efficiency between Devon Vele and Evan Engram.
Yeah, the only counter I would have is while Sean Payton is probably, better at scheming up offense, maybe he has the same opinion you do, which is that Evan Engram shouldn't be used like that. And Evan Engram, based on a full 7-8 year sample size of his career, is a good tight end. Is he, was he good in Jacksonville in the role that he was in? No, he was really inefficient. But Bo Nix is also a conservative quarterback. It's possible he feeds him a lot of targets too.
I just don't know how much why he can play. He's never shown the ability to play on the point of attack. And if he's going to predominantly be a big slot, like, I don't think he's going to be this 85+% snap share player. Like, I think Devon Bailey types, Marvin Mims types are going to work into the slot.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but Marvin Mims ran 27% of the routes last year. So until I see that, I probably
Did they all come in weeks 15 and 16?
Yeah,
or
apparently 17 and 18. He had monster games. But
that's what it was.
Anyways, Engram, if you are feeling like wearing some domes, you can probably put him into your tight end spot. Kyle Pitts, so disgusting to even mention his name. Like, honestly, the fact that he's still somehow tight end 15 in my rankings is like, it's so gross. Do I want to punt him into the sun? Yes, but if you squint, Penix and the Falcons offense will probably throw at a top 10 rate. London and Mooney can't soak up all of that volume. And as crazy as it sounds, Pitts is only 24 years old and still has physical ability. The part of the game that's like ruining his career at this point in time is like mental. It's his second year in the system. They're already hyping him up for that reason. Expectations are low, guys. Like Kyle Pitts, normally you got to spend a 5th round pick, a 4th round pick on him or whatever. But I mean, as your second tight end in best ball, or maybe you full-fledged punt, and let's say you grabbed a safer tight end, you grabbed Kelce in the 8th round or something, and you're like, I feel like getting Kyle Pitts in the 14th because I want maybe a little bit of an upside swing, and then worst case scenario by week 3 you just drop him. I think that's fine.
Kyle Pitts, in the context of the tight end position, is a scratch-off ticket. You're expecting to be disappointed, but in the odd scenario that it does pay off, you make a good profit.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts, legitimately, if you punted tight end into oblivion and you're like, I'm not drafting a tight end until the 14th round and I'll grab Kyle Pitts and Hunter Henry and figure it out from there and stream the position or whatever. Kyle Pitts is the prototypical I'm fine streaming tight end.
He's going to go in the last round of your guys' drafts. He's going to go round 14, round 15 of your home leagues, and just think of it like this. And the 5% outcome Kyle Pitts is actually a difference maker. Would I rather just draft that in round 15 versus a guy that I think has a median projection that's better, who I could literally drop Kyle Pitts for after week 4 if I need to?
Yeah, like Hunter Henry types, Dalton Schultz types are going to be on the waiver wire anyways. So like there's no reason really to not take this swing. Like a couple of guys that missed this range, I mean, Dalton Kincaid is ass, but he's a similar range of Kyle Pitts where like, yeah, on the
he's a similar strain of ass.
Yeah, on the 5% chance that Dalton Kincaid isn't total, utter, and disgusting urine, then there's a chance that he could be a functional tight end. But Dalton
probably not, but I mean, we have Kyle Pitts ranked here.
Yeah,
so
like I mean, I can't really defend Kyle Pitts at all, and I'm sure Dalton Kincaid truthers can't defend him at all. So those are the two guys that it's like, okay, you normally have to pay like last year you had to pay a 5th or a 6th round pick for these guys, and now you're getting them in the 14th. Like, I mean, there's not a huge difference to their projections now.
Yeah, and shout out the bar from our last tight end video where I said maybe Kyle Pitts did live up to the expectation of being the gold standard, except the color gold was just urine.
Yeah, just absolute urine. Anyways, I would say try and get your tight ends before tight end 13 to 15 if you can. If you have to punt them, I guess Pitts, Henry is not the worst thing in the world to do. I don't think we forgot any other major names. There's maybe some other guys that people want us to talk about, but that's the top 15 tight ends. We did wide receivers yesterday. We did running backs earlier this week as well. Quarterbacks will be coming up next. Make sure you guys stay tuned to that if you want to take some of this advice and, draft some Best Ball Mania teams and fade the living daylights out of Jonnu Smith and hammer George Kittle anytime you possibly can. Pause. Then head on over to the link down below in the pinned comment. Use the promo code FSE. When you sign up over on Underdog, you'll get up to $1,000 in bonus funds. You'll also get a gimme pick to use on, NBA, NHL, maybe save it for the NFL season. And of course, our best ball rankings are up to date over on flockfantasy.com. Make sure to check those out. Dynasty stuff, other redraft stuff going to be coming in the next coming weeks. It is May 24th. What day is it? May 24th as we're recording this. So we still got plenty of time to talk about redraft stuff. And I really appreciate you guys for coming back. Redraft people, let's get back to the scene. Let's get back into the swing of things. And we are very excited for this calendar season. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.